The relationship between Israel and Iran has long been one of the most volatile and defining rivalries in the modern Middle East. To understand the war fought between them, both in shadows and in open confrontation, it is necessary to go back decades to the roots of ideology, power, and survival that continue to dictate the actions of both states. This is not a conventional war fought across recognized borders with declared armies. Instead, it is a conflict of spies and covert operatives, of proxy militias, clandestine bombings, and sophisticated cyber attacks. It is a war carried out in dimly lit rooms where intelligence officers pore over intercepted messages, on streets where car bombs target nuclear scientists, and across deserts where militias move silently with arms supplied by one side to weaken the other. The struggle has shaped regional politics, altered alliances, and set the stage for repeated global crises. When the Iranian Revolution of 1979 overthrew the Shah, one of Washington's closest allies in the Middle East, Israel was directly affected. Under the Shah, Iran and Israel shared strategic cooperation against common Arab rivals. But with Ayatollah Khomeini's rise, Tehran declared Israel not just an adversary, but an illegitimate state to be wiped from the map. This ideological opposition was not just rhetoric. It fueled a decades-long Iranian policy of arming anti-Israel groups, particularly Hezbollah in Lebanon, and later influencing Hamas in Gaza. Israel, in turn, developed its own doctrine to counter Iranian influence, building alliances with Arab states equally threatened by Iran's rise. The stage was set for a relentless shadow war that would intensify with each decade. Israel's primary concern has been Iran's nuclear program. Since the early 2000s, Tehran has pursued uranium enrichment, claiming it for civilian energy, while Israel and much of the Western intelligence community warned that it masked ambitions for a nuclear bomb. The prospect of Iran achieving nuclear weapons was deemed existential by Israel. This fueled a campaign of sabotage and assassination unprecedented in modern intelligence history. Iranian nuclear scientists were gunned down on Tehran streets, bombs hidden in motorcycles or attached magnetically to cars. Mysterious explosions rocked enrichment facilities. Computer viruses such as the infamous Stuxnet, widely believed to have been engineered by Israeli and U.S. intelligence, disrupted centrifuges deep underground, proving that cyberspace had become another front of the war. But Israel has not fought alone. It cultivated an intricate network of intelligence assets across the Middle East, sometimes operating in coordination with Western agencies, sometimes independently. Mossad, Israel's foreign intelligence service, became a name whispered with fear and awe. Its operations inside Iran were remarkable, not just for their daring, but for their precision. The 2018 theft of Iran's secret nuclear archive from a warehouse in Tehran, with operatives smuggling out 500 tons of classified documents, demonstrated both the scale of Israeli penetration and Tehran's vulnerability. The documents, later revealed publicly by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, laid bare Iran's undeclared nuclear activities and sent a message that nowhere was safe from Israeli reach. Iran, however, is not merely a passive victim. It, too, has developed one of the most sophisticated regional networks of intelligence and paramilitary operations. Through its Quds Force, the external branch of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, Tehran has cultivated proxies stretching from Lebanon to Yemen. Hezbollah, in particular, has been both a deterrent and a weapon, armed with tens of thousands of rockets pointed at Israeli cities. For every Israeli strike against Iranian assets in Syria or Lebanon, Tehran has sought ways to respond, sometimes through bombings abroad, sometimes through attempted kidnappings of Israeli or Jewish targets in distant countries. In 1992 and 1994, bombings of the Israeli embassy and a Jewish center in Argentina were attributed to Iranian-backed operatives, a stark reminder that the battlefield extended far beyond the Middle East. The war between Israel and Iran has also been fought in the skies of Syria. Since the civil war erupted in 2011, Iran has poured resources into supporting the Assad regime, deploying militias and transferring advanced weaponry through Syrian territory. Israel, determined to prevent Hezbollah from obtaining precision-guided missiles or Iran from entrenching militarily, has launched hundreds of airstrikes on convoys, warehouses, and command centers. This cat-and-mouse game, though rarely acknowledged directly by either side, has become a central theater of their conflict. Civilians in Syria often find themselves caught in the middle of these shadow battles, with explosions lighting up Damascus nights or unexplained fires consuming warehouses near airports. The nature of the conflict is not limited to weapons and bombs. There is a deep psychological war at play. Both nations know perception is as powerful as action. Each assassination, each foiled plot is a message. Israel seeks to project invulnerability, showing that no Iranian secret is beyond its grasp. Iran, in turn, emphasizes resilience, portraying itself as the champion of resistance against what it frames as Zionist aggression and Western imperialism. This psychological struggle influences regional populations and shapes political narratives from Beirut to Baghdad. Economically, the rivalry has global repercussions. Iran's oil exports, frequently targeted by sanctions pushed by Israel through its allies in Washington, have often been the subject of sabotage. Tankers in the Gulf have been attacked, pipelines disrupted, and shipping lanes threatened, sparking fears of wider escalation that could choke global energy supplies. Israel's accusations that Iran supplies weapons to groups across the Middle East add to the rationale for these pressures, while Iran argues it is defending itself against decades of economic warfare aimed at suffocating its sovereignty. The shadow war has spilled into cyberspace more dramatically in recent years. Israeli infrastructure has been targeted by Iranian hackers, from water systems to hospitals, while Iranian networks have been infiltrated by Israeli cyber units. The mutual escalation in this invisible battlefield raises concerns that one day a cyber attack could trigger a real-world war, disrupting critical infrastructure or causing casualties in ways once unimaginable. Both sides are acutely aware of these dangers, yet neither seems willing to abandon the digital battlefield. The global community watches this struggle with unease. Western powers, particularly the United States, often find themselves entangled in the rivalry, sometimes aligning with Israel, sometimes seeking to negotiate with Iran, as seen in the nuclear deal of 2015. That agreement, designed to limit Iran's enrichment activities in exchange for sanctions relief, was hailed as a diplomatic breakthrough. Israel, however, strongly opposed it, arguing that it merely delayed Iran's nuclear ambitions without dismantling them. When the U.S. withdrew from the deal under the Trump administration, tensions spiked again, with Iran resuming enrichment and Israel intensifying sabotage. The cycle of escalation seemed endless, leaving Europe and other international actors frustrated at their inability to mediate a sustainable solution. Yet perhaps the most dangerous dimension of this war is the risk of miscalculation. With so many covert operations, proxy confrontations, and cyber attacks, the potential for one strike to spiral into full-scale war is ever present. A misfired rocket in Lebanon, an assassination in Tehran, or a tanker explosion in the Gulf could trigger a chain reaction drawing in regional and global powers. Analysts warn that while both Israel and Iran prefer the shadows, preferring limited actions to full confrontation, the line between the two is perilously thin. Ordinary people, meanwhile, bear the brunt of this invisible war. Iranian scientists fearful of assassination, Lebanese families living under the shadow of rocket stockpiles, Syrian civilians caught between airstrikes, and Israeli citizens practicing drills for missile attacks. These are the human costs of a conflict sustained by ideology, mistrust, and geopolitical ambition. The voices of those people rarely penetrate the headlines dominated by explosions, spy games, or fiery speeches from leaders. Yet their suffering reminds us that even wars fought in the shadows are wars all the same, with casualties measured not only in deaths but in fear and uncertainty. As the rivalry enters yet another decade, the question lingers, can this war of spies, bombs, and proxy forces ever truly end? Or is it destined to remain an endless cycle of escalation and retaliation, with each side convinced its survival depends on the other's defeat? The answer remains elusive. What is clear, however, is that the Israeli-Iranian struggle is not a sideshow. It is a central axis of Middle Eastern politics, shaping alliances, fueling conflicts, and testing the boundaries of modern warfare. From assassinations in Tehran to airstrikes in Damascus, from cyber attacks in Tel Aviv to rockets in Beirut, the war continues, often unseen, always simmering, and perpetually threatening to ignite into something far larger than either side claims to want. This is the nature of modern conflict. No front lines, no declarations, but a perpetual battle of intelligence and ideology, where traitors, spies, and bombs define the reality of nations locked in a struggle for supremacy. Israel and Iran may both hope to manage this war in the shadows, but the danger lies in the shadows themselves. History shows that even the most carefully managed rivalries can spiral out of control. The world watches, wary, as this dangerous game continues, a game where a single move could redraw the map of the Middle East, or perhaps ignite a fire far beyond its borders.